Stop looking at it. Just stop. Stop staring at what is in front of you as if it has the final word on your life. It does not. What you are looking at right now, the circumstances, the conditions, the visible evidence of where you are, none of it is permanent. None of it is final. None of it is the truth about who you are or what is coming for you. It is only a reflection, a delayed reflection of what you were assuming inside yourself, weeks, months, years ago. That is all it is. And if you keep staring at it, if you keep giving it your full emotional attention, if you keep letting it speak to you as though it is reality, you will keep feeding it. And it will keep growing. This is the trap most people never escape, not because they are weak, not because they are unlucky, but because no one ever told them that what they see around them is not the cause of their life. It is the consequence of it. The cause is inside. The cause has always been inside. Deep in the part of your mind that operates beneath words, beneath logic, beneath conscious thought. The part that does not argue. The part that does not reason. The part that simply accepts what you repeatedly feel to be true and then builds a world around it. That part is your subconscious mind, and it has been building your life faithfully according to every assumption you have ever carried. Not the assumptions you wished were true, the assumptions you actually felt were true, the ones that lived quietly beneath the surface, the ones that whispered when you were tired, when you were alone, when something went wrong, and your first feeling told you, "This always happens to me." That feeling, that automatic inner response, that is an assumption, and it has been shaping your life more powerfully than any action you have ever taken. Most people do not want to hear this because it means the life they are unhappy with was not given to them by the world. It was generated from within them, not intentionally, not consciously, but generated nonetheless. And here is what makes this the most important truth you will ever hear. If your current reality was created by your assumptions, then a new reality can be created by new assumptions. The same law that built the cage can build the door. The same process that produced limitation can produce liberation. Nothing needs to change outside of you first. The outside has never been the starting point. The inside is. The inside always has been. But we were never taught this. We were taught to look at results and draw conclusions. We were taught that what exists is what is real. We were taught to trust the visible and question the invisible. And so we walk through our lives, allowing what we see to decide what we believe, allowing circumstances to dictate self-concept, allowing the outer picture to define the inner identity. And then we wonder why nothing changes. Nothing changes because you keep confirming the old story every time you look at your current reality and say, "This is who I am. This is what is possible for me. This is the kind of life I get." Every time you say that, silently or out loud, with feeling or without, you are giving the subconscious mind an instruction, and it follows that instruction without question. It does not ask whether the instruction is good for you. It does not care whether you deserve better. It simply builds what you give it. So if you give it fear, it builds fearful conditions. If you give it lack, it builds scarcity. If you give it doubt, it builds delay. And if you give it the unshakable assumption of something better, it builds that too. With the same faithfulness, with the same precision, without exception. This is not motivation. This is not positivity. This is the mechanics of how your inner world creates your outer world. And once you truly understand it, you realize that the only real work is never outside. It is always inside. Now here is where the real difficulty begins, because understanding this is one thing, living it is another. When you decide to assume something new, when you decide to carry a new inner story about yourself, the world does not immediately cooperate. Your circumstances do not instantly transform. The people around you do not suddenly treat you differently. The evidence you are waiting for does not appear on cue. And in that gap, in that silence between the new assumption and the visible confirmation, most people collapse. They look at the unchanged outer world and they say, "It is not working. Nothing is happening. I was fooling myself." And in that moment, they abandon the new assumption and return to the old one, and the old reality solidifies again, deeper this time. because now there is also the memory of trying and failing. This is why so many people feel stuck, not because the law does not work, but because they never stayed long enough for it to work. They planted a seed and dug it up 3 days later, wondering why there was no tree. The seed was real, the soil was ready, but patience was missing, inner loyalty was missing. The refusal to let appearances have the final word was missing, and that refusal is everything. That is the entire practice, not the imagination alone, not the feeling alone. But the refusal to let the outer world convince you that your inner assumption is false. The visible world will always argue. It will always present evidence for the old story. It will always look like nothing has changed right up until the moment everything changes. And that final period of contradiction, that stretch of time when inner and outer seem most opposed, that is not a sign that you are wrong. That is often the last push before the shift. The moment most people give up is usually the moment that was closest to the breakthrough. So what does it actually mean to ignore your reality? It does not mean you pretend nothing exists. It does not mean you walk into traffic because you imagined a clear road. It means you stop using your current circumstances as the measure of what is true about you. It means you stop allowing visible facts to overrule invisible assumptions. It means you look at the condition and say, I see you, I acknowledge you exist, but you are not my identity, you are not my future, you are not the final word on what I am becoming. You are a reflection of where I have been, and I am no longer going there. That quiet internal declaration, held with calm certainty, repeated not in desperation but in knowing, that is what begins to shift the subconscious. Not shouting affirmations at the mirror. Not forcing excitement you do not feel, just a quiet, settled, unshakable knowing, I am no longer this. I am already becoming something else. And that knowing, practiced daily, reinforced gently, held through doubt and delay, will eventually become the dominant assumption. And the dominant assumption always wins. Always. Not sometimes. Always. Because the subconscious does not respond to what you occasionally think. It responds to what you consistently feel to be true. Consistency is the key. Not intensity, not force. Consistency. A quiet assumption held every day is infinitely more powerful than a peak emotional moment experienced once. The subconscious learns through repetition. It accepts through familiarity, and once an assumption becomes familiar, once it begins to feel natural rather than forced, the resistance dissolves. And when resistance dissolves, manifestation accelerates. Because now the subconscious is no longer divided. It is no longer receiving one message from your deliberate imagination and a contradictory message from your automatic emotional reactions. It is receiving one message, one clear, consistent, emotionally accepted message, and it builds accordingly. This is the state you are working toward, not perfection, not constant peak emotion, just consistency, just the daily return to the assumption of who you are choosing to become. Just the quiet refusal, day after day, to let appearances be louder than assumption. That is the practice, and it will change everything. Think about what you are actually doing every time you look at your current reality and feel defeated by it. You are not just observing a situation. You are agreeing with it. You are signing your name to it. You are saying, yes, this is real. Yes, this is permanent. Yes, this is who I am. And the subconscious records that agreement the way a court records a signature, official, accepted, filed, and then it continues building your life according to what you just confirmed. This is why two people can face the identical situation and walk away with completely different futures. Not because life favored one over the other, not because one was more talented or more deserving, but because one looked at the situation and agreed with limitation, and the other looked at the same situation and refused to let it define them. One signed the agreement. The other did not, and from that single inner difference, their entire experiences began to diverge. Same starting point, completely different destinations. Because destiny is not determined by circumstance. Destiny is determined by assumption. The assumption you carry about who you are and what this world is willing to give you. And here is the part that changes everything once you truly feel it. You have been carrying assumptions your entire life, every single day, without stopping, without realizing it. You wake up in the morning, and before you even speak a word, something inside you already knows what kind of day to expect. Something inside you already has a feeling about yourself, about your worth, about your future, about whether today will be different or more of the same. That feeling is not random. That feeling is your dominant assumption, running in the background like a program that never closes. And your life has been responding to that program every single day. Not to your prayers, not to your efforts alone, to that program. So the question you must sit with honestly is this: what is actually running in the background of your mind when no one is watching, when nothing is distracting you, when you are alone with yourself in the quiet? What do you feel to be true about who you are? Not what you wish were true, not what you tell other people, what you actually feel. Because that feeling, that deep automatic emotional knowing, is the assumption that is currently creating your life. And if that feeling says you are behind, if it says good things happen to others, but not really to you, if it says you are still waiting for your turn, if it says maybe but not yet, then that is what the subconscious is building from. And it will keep building from that until you change it. Not change your behavior first, change that feeling first, change that deep automatic knowing, replace it with something new, something that says, I am already this, something that says it is already done, something that says, I do not need the outer world to confirm me, because I have already confirmed myself. This is what assuming means, not pretending, not performing, not forcing a smile while feeling terrified inside. Assuming means reaching the place within yourself where the desired reality feels more true than the current one, where the inner world feels more solid than the outer world, where you stop relating to your desire as something you are chasing and start relating to it as something you already are. That shift in relationship changes everything, because when you are chasing something, the chase itself confirms distance. Every action taken from chasing energy quietly tells the subconscious, I do not have this yet. I am trying to get there. I am not there. And the subconscious faithfully mirrors that message. It keeps the desire at exactly the distance your assumption places it. But when you assume the thing is already yours, when you move through your day from that inner place of already, the energy is completely different. The subconscious receives a different message. Not, I am trying to get there, but I am already there. And it begins organizing your experience accordingly, not through magic, through the quiet mechanics of how consciousness shapes perception, behavior, decision, and opportunity. You begin noticing different things. You begin responding differently to situations. You begin making choices that align with the new identity without consciously deciding to, because identity drives behavior automatically. You do not have to force a confident person to walk confidently. You do not have to remind a generous person to give. You do not have to convince a person who assumes success to pursue opportunities. They do it naturally, because the identity is already settled, and settled identity produces natural, effortless, aligned action. This is why inner work is not passive. It is the most active, most powerful, most consequential work a person can do, because when identity shifts, everything downstream shifts with it. Automatically, permanently, without struggle. Now I want to speak directly to the part of you that already understands this, but keeps returning to the old way. The part that reads something like this and feels it deeply in the moment, and then 20 minutes later finds itself staring at the bank account, staring at the empty phone, staring at the mirror, and feeling the old familiar weight again. That part of you is not weak. That part of you is conditioned. There is a difference. Weakness is the absence of capacity. Conditioning is a pattern that was installed without your permission and reinforced so many times that it now feels like the truth. But feelings of truth are not the same as truth itself. The person who grew up feeling invisible feels invisibility so deeply that it seems like reality. The person who was told they would never amount to anything feels that limitation so completely that it seems like an honest assessment of their life. But it is not honest, it is only familiar. And familiarity is the most convincing liar there is, because the mind trusts what feels known. It gravitates toward what feels expected. It finds comfort in the predictable, even when the predictable is painful. This is why some people unconsciously reject good things when they arrive. An opportunity appears, and something inside them finds a reason it will not work. Love shows up, and something inside them finds a reason to pull away. Success begins to materialize, and something inside them quietly self-sabotages. Not because they want to suffer, but because suffering is what feels familiar, and the subconscious always moves toward what feels like home. So the work is not just building new assumptions, the work is also making the new assumption feel like home. Making abundance feel familiar, making love feel natural, making success feel expected rather than miraculous, making peace feel normal rather than suspicious. This takes time, it takes repetition, it takes the willingness to sit inside a feeling that initially seems unearned, and stay there anyway. Not because you have convinced your logic, but because you are training your emotional reality. You are installing a new program, and every time you return to the feeling of the new assumption, every time you choose to inhabit the state of the person, you are running the new program one more time. And each time you run it, it becomes slightly more familiar, slightly more natural, slightly more like home. Until one day you wake up and the old feeling is not the first thing anymore. The new one is, and on that day, the outer world begins shifting with a speed and consistency that surprises even you. Because the subconscious is no longer divided. The resistance is gone. The new identity is dominant, and dominant identity always finds its physical equivalent. Always. Now let me tell you what this does not look like. It does not look like forcing happiness when you feel pain. It does not look like pretending everything is perfect when your life is genuinely difficult. It does not look like denying the reality of hard emotions or suppressing what is real in order to seem spiritually advanced. That is not assumption, that is performance. And performance exhausts the mind and never reaches the subconscious deeply enough to change anything. Real assumption is quieter than that. It is the decision made beneath emotion, the settled knowing that exists even on the hard days. The part of you that can feel pain and still know it is not permanent. The part that can acknowledge difficulty and still refuse to call it destiny. The part that can look at where you are honestly and still not confuse where you are with who you are. That is the distinction. Where you are is a location. Who you are is an identity. And identity is what you get to choose every single day, regardless of location, regardless of circumstance, regardless of what the outer world is currently reflecting back. You get to choose. And that choice, made consistently, made with quiet certainty, made not in desperation but in knowing, is the most powerful force available to any human being. It is more powerful than talent, more powerful than opportunity, more powerful than any external advantage life could offer, because a person with a transformed identity will find the talent, will create the opportunity, will generate the advantage from within. While a person with every external resource but an identity rooted in limitation will find a way to return to limitation. Every time. Identity is that powerful, and you have the ability to change yours. Starting not tomorrow. Not when things get better. Not when you finally feel ready. Now, in this moment. With the simple, quiet, unforced decision to begin assuming something new about who you are and what this life is going to give you. There is a version of you that already exists, not in the future, not somewhere waiting to be earned, already existing. In the only place anything real ever exists first, inside, in consciousness, in the dimension where all physical reality begins before it becomes visible to human eyes. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is not wishful thinking. It is the inevitable you, the you that becomes real in the outer world, the moment you accept it as real in the inner world. And accepting it does not require proof. It does not require permission. It does not require the circumstances to align first or the people around you to agree or the evidence to appear before you allow yourself to believe. It requires only one thing. The decision to assume it is already so, quietly, certainly, without apology, without waiting. Right now. This is the part most people hesitate at, because it feels like too much. It feels presumptuous. It feels like you are claiming something you have not yet earned, and that feeling itself is an old assumption speaking, the assumption that you must deserve before you receive, that you must prove before you possess, that the outer world must move first before the inner world is allowed to settle. But that is not how this works. That has never been how this works. The inner world moves first, always, without exception. The T. Farmer does not wait for the harvest to believe in the seed. The architect doesn't wait for the building to trust the blueprint. The assumption comes before the evidence. The inner reality precedes the outer one. This is not a belief system. This is the sequence. And once you align yourself with this sequence, you stop waiting for the outer world to give you permission to feel like the person you are choosing to become, everything begins to move. Not all at once, not always visibly. But something shifts. Something beneath the surface begins reorganizing, and you can feel it if you are paying attention to the right thing, not the circumstances. The feeling, because the feeling changes first. Before the bank account, before the relationship, before the opportunity. The feeling changes, and that feeling is the signal. That is the confirmation you have been waiting for, not the outer evidence, the inner shift. The moment it begins to feel natural to be the person you are assuming yourself to be. That naturalness is everything, because what feels natural to you is what the subconscious has accepted as identity, and what the subconscious has accepted as identity is what it will consistently produce in your outer experience. So you are not looking for instant results. You are not watching the world anxiously for signs. You are doing something far more powerful. You are changing what feels normal inside you. You are making the new identity familiar. You are returning to it daily, not with force, not with desperation, with the quiet consistency of someone who already knows the outcome, someone who has seen the end before the beginning, someone who does not need the middle to be comfortable because the destination is already settled within them. This is what it means to live from assumption. Not to occasionally affirm something positive and then spend the rest of the day reacting to appearances, but to move through your entire day from a settled inner identity. To wake up already knowing who you are, to encounter challenges and remain rooted because your identity is not dependent on the challenge resolving easily. To experience delays and remain calm because your assumption does not require the timeline to cooperate. To stand in the middle of the old life and carry the certainty of the new one so consistently, so deeply, so naturally, that the outer world eventually has no choice but to reorganize itself around what you have become inside. And it will. This is not hope. This is the law of how consciousness works. The outer world is not independent of you. It has never been independent of you. It is a continuous reflection of your dominant inner state. And when that inner state changes, completely. When the new assumption is no longer something you are trying to feel, but something you simply are, the reflection changes, fully, permanently. Not because you forced it, because you became it. Now I want to speak to the ones who have been here before, who have heard something like this, felt the truth of it, tried to apply it, and somewhere along the way, lost the thread. Who went back to the old patterns, who let circumstances speak louder than assumption, who feel like maybe this works for other people, but their situation is different. Their past is heavier. Their obstacles are more real. Their reasons for staying stuck are more justified. To those people, I want to say something clearly. Your past is not your prison. It is only your past. It only has power over your future if you keep using it to define your present identity. The moment you stop identifying with what happened to you, the moment you stop carrying old pain as proof of permanent limitation, the moment you refuse to let yesterday's story be tomorrow's assumption, something extraordinary becomes possible. A completely different life. Not because the past is erased, but because the past is no longer being used as the foundation for your self-concept. You are not your history. You are what you assume yourself to be right now, and right now is always available. Right now is always the starting point. Right now is always where the power is. This is one of the most liberating truths a human being can internalize. You do not have to fix everything that went wrong. You do not have to heal every wound before you are allowed to move forward. You do not have to wait until you feel completely ready, because complete readiness never comes before the decision. It comes after. It comes as a result of the decision. You decide the identity first, and then readiness follows. Confidence follows. Clarity follows. Opportunity follows. Everything follows from the decision, not from the circumstances being perfect first, from the decision. So make it, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, in the stillness of your own mind. In the private space between your thoughts where no one else can see or judge or argue. Make the decision about who you are. Choose the assumption you will carry forward, not as a performance, as a settled inner knowing. I am this, not I am trying to be this, not I hope to become this, not I am working toward this. I am this, already, completely, without condition. And then carry that knowing through the doubt, through the delay, through the days when nothing visible confirms it, through the moments when the old feelings rise again, through every circumstance that tries to pull you back into the old agreement with limitation. Carry it anyway. Not aggressively, not with clenched teeth and forced determination, with the calm certainty of someone who simply knows, the way you know your own name, the way you know what you look like, not because you are trying to remember, because it is simply true. Let the new assumption become that natural, that settled, that undeniable inside you, and watch what the world does in response. Watch how differently people begin to treat you. Watch how differently opportunities begin to move. Watch how differently you begin to see yourself in the quiet moments when the world goes still. Something will have shifted, something fundamental, something that cannot be explained fully by anything visible that happened. Because the real change happened inside. Long before the outside caught up, long before anyone else could see it, long before the evidence appeared. It happened in the only place it ever could have happened first, in you. In the quiet decision to stop letting appearances have authority over your identity. In the moment you chose assumption over evidence. In the moment you looked at the current reality and said, I see you, but I am not staying here. I have already moved on inside. I am already the person I am choosing to become, and nothing you show me will change that. That moment, that quiet, certain, unshakable inner moment, that is where your new life begins. Not when the circumstances change, not when the world agrees with you, not when the evidence finally appears. Now, in that moment of decision, in that settled inner knowing, in that simple, powerful, life-changing choice to ignore what is currently visible and assume what is already true inside you. That is the whole practice. That is the entire shift. That is the thing that changes everything. Assume it. Hold it. Return to it. Persist in it. And never, not for a single moment, allow the outer world to convince you that your inner assumption is not already becoming real, because it is. It always has been, from the very moment you chose it.